Welcome to the Living Artist Podcast. I'm your host, Preston M. Smith. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Living Artist Podcast. I'm Preston M. Smith, at PMS Artwork everywhere on internet land and socials. I want to thank you for landing on this podcast. Whether you're a professional artist, just getting started in the art world, a collector of art, or just consider yourself a creative person, this podcast has something for you. I like to think of it as a fun way to rant and talk to other creative people about living the life of an artist, surviving and getting ahead in the art world, and enjoying your life. But most importantly, not waiting until you're dead to make it happen. All right, let's get started. Hello, hello.
Hello.
How are you?
Oh, hi, Preston.
How are
Very
you doing?
well. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Nice to see you guys.
Nice to see you too. Love the hair.
Wow, look at your hair.
Yeah, look at yours.
I know, right? I know mine is crazy right now. It's just, I might as well just shave the sides off and just go with the top part. But I got to be presentable in the world, I guess, right? How are you two? Is it 4:00 over there?
It is, and good morning to you.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you for talking to us so early.
I got up early. I did a little run. I was like, all right, I got to get ready. And then, I was having a little voice malfunction earlier. So we'll see if we can get through this. But
no.
I've been kind of combing over. Oh, first of all, are you ready to talk?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
As ready as can be.
Always.
As ready as can be. I'm sure you heard the recording and process creepy voice at the beginning. So this is already being recorded. I wanted to really quickly, before we get started, just ask a stupid question about the pronunciation of both of your last names, just so I don't screw it up.
It's Venon or Venon, whichever one you like, really.
Venon.
I don't really mind. Yeah.
Okay. This is important. And then is it just Verity?
It is.
Okay. Perfect. All right. I just wanted to make sure, get that out of the way at the beginning. So thanks for being on the podcast. I wanted to first talk about myself. No, I just wanted to talk about my experience with Artfinder. I've done a favorite online art marketplaces episode before, and Artfinder was at the top of the list. Artfinder, the platform, was actually the first place that I ever sold a major piece online. I think this was close to 7 years ago. And since then, I'm like approaching 200 sales and 100 5-star reviews. And I've actually sold a lot of diptychs, triptychs, and quadriptychs. So it's well over 200 pieces that I've actually sold in Artfinder. And it accounts for like a third or more of my actual total art sales, which is great. That's amazing. So I wanted to thank you and Artfinder for giving me that platform to be able to do that in the first place. And I know it's been wonderful for a lot of other artists too. I just wanted to start by having you talk about yourself. What do you do at Artfinder? What's your official title, and a little bit about what you do? And either one of you can start.
Okay, I'll go.
Jane, you go first.
Get it, Jane, get it.
Okay, so my current job title is Senior Marketing Manager, but I have been at Artfinder a very long time. So I joined about 6 years ago, which is like an eternity in startup land. And I was recruited into Artfinder to do PR, which is my background. And then my role has become more broad and more kind of generalist marketing as those years have gone by.
Yes. And I told you last time we spoke, you were kind of OG like me with
yeah.
Artfinder here. How long has Artfinder actually been in existence? It's been about, 7 or 8 years?
Longer, 2010.
Oh, wow,
when
really?
The business started, but then it was like slightly different to begin with, and then it pivoted to become the art marketplace model that it is today in 2013.
Oh,
so we kind of we count 2013 as when Artfinder started. Before that, it was a kind of Wikipedia for famous art, and you could buy posters of the famous art. Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't even aware of that.
Yeah, kind of weird prehistory. So
okay.
2010 or 2013.
2010, 2013, depending on where you're starting it. That's a little Artfinder trivia for everybody. I didn't know that. And David, how about you?
So my job at Artfinder is community leader. It makes it sound like I'm running a cult of some sorts, but it's really not like that.
Hey, my wife and I are obsessed
like
with
that.
cults right now.
Yeah. The word leader made me a little bit queasy at first. I was like, am I though? Am I?
Am I really the
But
leader?
Yeah, I think the idea is that it's very much being a community manager. Basically, it's about being a voice for our community of artists, being a bridge between our community of artists and the company and our team, making sure that we create a lot of occasions for us to interact with each other, because I think it's really important. Managing the forum, any avenue of communications that we have to artists. We have an artist newsletter, for example, all sorts of things like that. So just make sure that artists are aware of what we're doing, that we're aware of how they're feeling and what's going on in the community, and trying to facilitate communication as much as possible, which is a key part of a happy community.
Yeah, both of those are very big jobs, and I want to tell you, because a lot of artists right now are on multiple art marketplaces online, and it is so important to have people who actually listen to you. I know that's a difficult task. We'll get into that a little bit later. It's a difficult task dealing with so many artists and personalities and maybe even egos. But there's so many other art platforms that are just like, well, do your thing, and then la la la. Like we don't know what's going on. We have no open communication. So that's great. That's one thing I really love about Artfinder. So thank you for both talking to us about that. I have a question I always ask everybody, which is origin story. It's kind of like superhero-like, but just a little bit of your background, just growing up, what got you into art? Why are you interested in art, and how you became a part of Artfinder? So why don't we let David start this time? Jane, if you're okay with that.
Hey.
We can fight. Okay. All right.
So I'm originally from France. I lived in France for 25 years and then moved to England in 2004. So it's been 17 years now. It feels like it's been twice as long.
Yeah.
And this feels like home to me, to be honest. I think I've accustomed myself to my life here. I love the language. And my art career has been quite patchy, to say the least. I've studied art in high school for 3 years, and then I went on to university to do a degree for 2 years. Didn't get my degree at the end of the 2 years for some silly reason, not even because of my art practice, but just because I took a language that was a dead language and I didn't study enough. So word for everyone, just make sure you study all your modules. That's managed for everyone. So I gave up on the study area altogether, went into working, but I could never really let go of art because it was what I'd done since I was a kid. It was everything about me. I felt this is where my brain is the happiest. This is how I normally see the world, think about the world generally. So it's never been a hobby for me. It's always been something that's quite vital to me and that I do on a daily basis, but I just never made a living out of it. I went back into studying and decided to do a fashion design course because I was really into fashion and creating collections. Cool. So got a fashion design degree, was going to go to Paris to work in a fashion house of sorts. And then so if I'm going to do this, live on the 7th floor in a tiny flat, work as a waiter on the side, I might as well do this in a bigger city. So I came to London with not very much and a little bag and a little herb.
The hero's journey.
Yeah, definitely that. It wasn't very heroic, really. So maybe if that were okay, have been better. I stupidly thought that being French, it was going to be quite a credit for me that I'd studied fashion design, French fashion designer coming to London. Yeah. I said, I'm just going to do up my CVs everywhere and I'm just going to get a job like this. Of course, it didn't happen.
That sounds like every actor's story down here in Los Angeles.
Yeah, it's very that. It's very that. So I ended up working in the service industry generally, worked in restaurants, worked in bars, shops, customer service for quite a long time. Very different industries. Never give up on art, but had kind of given up on making a living out of it, like turning into a profession, for various reasons, insecurities mostly, and the fact that, you have to get on with life, you have to pay your rent, your bills and so forth, and you kind of forget because you don't really have the time. You do a full-time job. At the end of the day, you don't really have the energy or the time to just focus on your art as well. So I kind of put it on the back burner for quite a while. Went freelance for a bit, didn't really work out either. I think I was a bit too young for that. I hadn't matured enough as an artist or as a person, to be fair. So again, put that aside. And then after a while, 2 years ago, so the ad for Artfinder, and that was a revelation to me because it was the first time that I could do a job that was, not only paying my rent and my bills, but also was heavily linked to my main interest. and then interviewed for a company that said, well, we want to help artists make a living out of their art. How do you feel about that? And I was like, this is my life.
Yes.
You're basically wanting to make my dream come true. So yes, I support you. And yes, I will very much want to work with you. And it's been fantastic ever since. Like, it's been invaluable for me to see what it's like for artists to make a living out of their art, and what it demands and what it requires, in a very practical way, as much as in a, more mental way, like what is needed in terms of attitude as well. It's made me want to pursue my art career fully. It's made me want to try to be more creative and just allocate more time for me to create. So it's been a great motivation for that. So I think Artfinder has done a lot for me and my art career, whilst not physically doing anything for my art career, if you see what I mean.
Right. Yeah. Almost like, giving you that proper mentality to do it.
Yeah.
Like for me, I was, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say just a better, like a more realistic insight as to what was needed, which I didn't have. I had a very immature way to look at it. I saw that if I create stuff, someone will buy it, but it's not that. You have to put yourself out there a lot. You have to produce a lot. You have to market yourself a lot. And it demands a lot of time, and a lot of effort.
Yeah, for me, it's similar to my story. I came down here, I did acting and painting. I was like, I'm going to do both. I'm going to just kill it. And I waited tables for 16 or 17 years while I was transitioning into being a full-time artist. And I was stubborn because I was like, I'm not going to get a good job, because if I get a good job, I'm never going to come back. And so I was like, I'm going to keep doing this job that I dislike. So I have the motivation to become an artist. And that's what I did. And luckily I was stubborn enough, and luckily it paid off. But, it is difficult because a lot of artists just kind of think, oh, I'll just create something beautiful and somebody will notice my genius and then they will just sell my artwork. But no, you have to learn how to wear that hat. And Artfinder did the same thing for me. I actually used it as a job. I did it part-time. Every morning I would get up and upload something. I started uploading every day, something new, engage in the community, do all this. And I was like, I'm just going to keep doing it until I'm getting sales. I see people getting sales. I know it's possible. And then I finally got my first sale and it was like, oh, this is working. And I just kept repeating that. And finally I started making some sales, and I saved up some money to pay down my debt. And then I just kind of burned the boats and jumped into it and never looked back. So that's great. I mean, I relate to your story. And Jane, it's your turn.
Oh, well, I'm going to start by saying that I interviewed David for his role.
Oh, wow.
And
so you're responsible.
The story
He's responsible, yes. Blame Jane.
Brought back that moment, because David was one of our first hires after the COVID lockdown. And that was such a strange time for everyone, right? Like, Team Artfinder was 8 people at that time. And it was kind of like mid-March, and someone said, oh, let's do a day trial of working from home tomorrow, just to see if we can, just, in case something happens. And then after that day, we never came back. that day one was day one.
Oh,
and that
my
was
God.
it. And we were just all at home. And then, like, Artfinder's COVID journey was that we saw, quite a sudden dip in sales for a couple of weeks, and started to think, right, nobody knows what this is.
Yes.
We're going to have to look into cost cuttings. We're going to have to look into, stress testing the business. Yeah. And then all of a sudden it just took off. So
I know.
we then kind of, that was obviously amazing, but we hadn't planned for it to suddenly boom either. So we were suddenly hiring quite a lot of people, doing quite a lot of video calls, which is something that none of us had ever done before. And I just remember sitting in this room with Anna, our head of customer support, and David just told us this story in a coffee shop.
Oh, that's awesome.
I think you were in a coffee shop. And we were both
think I was home.
Yeah.
It's more romantic in a coffee shop, David. Let's keep it there.
Yeah, so let's say I was in a coffee shop.
He had his manifesto that he wrote on a napkin,
Wearing a beret. It's very French.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. That's cool.
Yeah. So you just brought it all back, David.
That's so cool. And then, Jane, I know you had a little bit of a creative writing background.
Yeah. So I grew up in Leeds, which is like grim northern England. The sun never shines in Leeds. It rains every day.
Perfect for a writer.
Yeah. And I did an English lit degree and kind of decided that I was going to be a journalist or a writer of, some sort. And I found myself back in Leeds, working in theatre PR, of all things, which was, in my head, like a writing job.
Yeah.
And in theatre, which was cool. A lot of Z-list celebrities.
Nice.
Yeah. And then I guess from there, like I had a few PR jobs. I also went freelance for a bit. And whilst I was freelance, I did a creative writing master's. And at that time, I was kind of like, right, I'm never going back to having a proper job. This is it. I'm going to be a writer. And then, like you said, Preston, it just kind of happens, doesn't it? Like an agency that I was freelancing for a lot told me that the tax man told them they had to hire me. So I was like, well, if the tax man says you have to hire me, okay.
There you go. Yeah.
I shouldn't have given in so easily, should I? Now I think about it. I should have been like, no. I'm going to be a writer. Anyway.
We wouldn't have you here, Jane. Come on.
And then I moved to London, and then a recruiter, like, not to sound too big-headed, but I get a lot of recruiter messages on LinkedIn, and I usually ignore them. But there's one particular one from, this company that supports artists making a living selling their art online. I was kind of like, I've got to go. Like, I've got to go see what this is.
Oh, wow.
And
so they sought you out.
Yeah. Cool. And I met with Jonas Almgren, who was CEO at the time.
I met him in LA.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, that was really cool.
Wasn't he like you couldn't meet with Jonas and not be like, yes, I want to work for you.
Yes, this is a very nice, open, amazing person. Yeah.
Yeah. And so the rest is history, really. Although, it's been like the Artfinder that I joined and the Artfinder that we are now, we've been through so much change and so much growth,
Yes.
Because I've never had a job this long ever, but it really feels like it's been 2, 3, 4 different jobs, it's grown a lot.
Yeah, and that's great. I mean, it's great that it sounds like it's challenged you too.
Oh, for sure. And I think that's a really good thing about startup life, isn't it, David? That you can you can take things on, if you're the kind of person who likes to own things, who likes to, have an idea and grab it and go with it, like it's yours for the taking.
It's really valuable as well, because I think if you work for a very big company, you usually will get given a very specific role, which have very specific tasks that you have to do, and you're very limited in your little box of this is what I need to do for this big company. I'm one part of a big chain, and that's kind of what it is. Working for a startup company generally means that you have to be really adaptable really quickly, because things change a lot. They have to adapt a lot. They have to improve. You have to put several hats on. You can't just do one thing. You have to learn a little bit about everything. And in the long run, what you find is that it creates people that are very capable in several areas, that understand the ins and outs of the business as a whole, not just a small part. So when problems happen, there's a lot more brain power there that's available for you to be able to work out how to deal with that and what's the best solution for it. And that doesn't really always happen in like very, very big company. If the person that makes the decision is not available, the decision is not made. So I think it's hard work. I'm not going to say it's not. It's hard work, and you have to keep your wits about, and you have to make sure that you don't take the stress on, and you deal with it perfectly. But generally speaking, it's probably the best experience one anyone could have is working for a startup company.
Oh, that's awesome.
And we're probably pushing it a bit, calling ourselves a startup 11 years in, aren't we?
Now
we should think about that.
Not.
Hey, milk it for all it's worth.
It's that kind of vibe. It's that kind of atmosphere. We're still a small and growing business. And I think it's like, we're a room full of people who enjoy working like that. So, it's culturally a startup.
Well, that's also a good little segue. I was going to save this for later, but let's talk about Artfinder being a certified B Corp. What does that mean, first of all? And can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes. So we certified as a B Corp in 2019. I think B Corp is a little bit better known in the US than it is over here. It is
even though most of us are like, huh?
Oh, okay.
No, I mean, it's probably just artists. We don't. I mean, maybe I'm just speaking for myself. Sorry, just go ahead.
Well, Patagonia, the clothing company, is a big one over there. Ben and Jerry's, or a B Corp. And it's a certification for profit businesses, holding them up to a certain ethical standard. So on environmental measures, on social impact. And it's like very scientifically measured. So there's a whole certification process, which takes most businesses like 6 months to a year to complete. And it's kind of very stringent set of criteria, and everything is proof checked. And then if you get a score of 80 or above out of 100, you get to certify as a B Corp. And even then, when you've reached that bar, which most don't the first time, you have to recertify every 3 years, and the expectation is that your score will increase. So we made it through in 2019, and we have now started the process of recertifying, which we need to do in 2022.
Yeah.
And we need to improve our score. So, I guess the nice thing about B Corp is that all the things it measures you on and scores you against are all of these things that we really want to do. So
yeah, right. And that are good
the things
for
we have
people
to
in the
do to
environment.
score better on B Corp are working on our carbon footprint and becoming carbon neutral.
I love it.
Which is a big one for us. And, how do we even begin to measure the carbon impact of all of our artist shipments going all over the world every day? That is a big, big task. And then once we've measured it, how do we best offset it? How do we reduce it?
Because you have to be practical, right? You have to be practical. It's a business. You have to be able to function as a business, but to be able to offset that, that's my wife and I, it's one of our biggest, issues is climate change. And that's the primary reason we actually became plant-based for about 7 or 8 years ago, because we were like, we're going to offset our carbon footprint.
Amazing.
But, it's one of those things where we still couldn't afford to buy an electric car or something like that, but we still have to drive with fuel. So you have to be practical, but also do what you can. And I love that about Artfinder, that they're doing that. So can you be a B Corp without being certified? Is that a dumb question?
No, you cannot.
Okay.
Basically. So you have to apply to the charity who run the certification, are called B Lab, and they have their regional branches. So ours is B Lab in the UK, and there'll be one in the US, and, around the world. And they run the program and they certify the businesses. So you cannot just be one. You cannot buy it. You cannot pretend. This is the great thing about it, right? It's a legit certification, and you either earn it or you do not.
Oh, and I'm sure some companies have tried to buy it.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Probably, yes.
And probably in the United States. I'm not going to name any names. You know who you are. But I like also that they have to check in on you every 3 years, because that does hold you accountable, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. Dave,
and
did
also,
you want to,
I guess, in terms of when and why we did that, I think Artfinder has always had a mission and a belief that we exist to support artists, and that is what we do.
Yeah.
And we've always done those things, but I think without that sort of formal certification that says that, it's just words. And it's quite cool to be good at the minute, isn't it? It's nice marketing to say nice things, and we wanted to actually do it, and we wanted to hold ourselves accountable. And when we heard of B Corp, it just made sense to us to do that.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of time and energy and resource went into that process at a time when our sales were really not in the best place. There were plenty of other areas we could have been focusing our interest, but it felt important, and it has been transformational actually for the business, for the people that we've hired. Every single person who works at Artfinder now is here because they believe in our mission and our purpose. And, that means that they love coming to work every day. That means that they go above and beyond it. It's all I think the very ethos of B Corp is that good for the planet and doesn't have to mean bad for business, right? And
it's balancing
it's nice
profit
that it's
and
both.
purpose.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, which is doable. I think that's a really important message there. It is doable. You don't have to sacrifice your values just because you want to make money, and you can live by your values and still make money. Those two things are not mutually exclusive, for sure. And Jane is 100% right on this. Knowing that the company you work for puts those values at the forefront of what they do, knowing that not only are you helping artists make a living out of their art, but you're also planting trees for every artwork that gets sold. And, things like that. Cool. It motivates you to want to work twice as hard, to want to give everything you have to this company because they're doing something right and you're doing something right. And to me, that's capital. Like if I know that whatever I'm doing for my job is having a small impact, even a small impact on the planet generally, on making things better, then what would you not want to? Do you know what I mean?
Yes, and it's also extra incentive to the company and also to the artist to sell work because everything that's sold, you're getting trees planted. That's amazing.
Exactly, and to the customers to buy them.
Yeah, exactly.
And to the customers to buy them. Yeah,
for sure. So buy more work from Artfinder.
Plant more trees. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. But I also love what you said, Jane, about kind of putting your money where your mouth is, getting certified as a B Corp. It's one of those things where nowadays kids see through all the bullshit. You know what I mean? They're used to hearing the words, but they want to see actions that back it up. Yeah. And that's what you're doing. So that's great. So I wanted to ask about, we talked about your creative side. Let's get into the community a little bit because Artfinder artists are wonderful. And I've made some great international friends from Artfinder that we communicate all the time. Actually, an artist, Damien Venditti, and I did a couple pieces where we started an artwork and then we sent it across. Like I sent it to Australia. He finished it. He did one there. He sent it to me and I finished it here. So it's been really cool. Yeah, it was really cool. And I've met his family. They came down here or over here. It's wonderful. I love meeting all these people, but I'm sure there's also the side that's, like we said at the beginning, it's difficult to kind of balance all that. Everybody's trying to sell work, of course, which is understandable. And not everybody is selling work or selling work as much as some people. So I'm sure it's complicated. I wanted to ask both of you, and I know, David, you're the leader. The leader.
Bow down, yes.
I'm bowing for you if you can't see. Yeah. But are there any artists' best practices, things that artists should do, best ways to kind of communicate on there? Because I think a lot of artists don't really realize that sometimes they're just screaming into the abyss. It's not really the best way to communicate. So I think that was a very loaded question, but
it's a great question. It's not an easy question, but it's a great question. I would say that it's difficult because you have to put yourself in the mind of the artist in this sense. If this is your bread and butter and you're feeding your family with it, you're paying your rent, and this is your roof is resting on you selling your art, you will care very little about the impact of it on other sellers. You will only care about how is it impacting you and what are you not selling personally. Sure. And as a company, you will tend to address people as a whole because you can't just do individual work all the time. So finding that balance between addressing personal issues that people may have about not being featured enough or not having enough sales, things like that. And generally what we are able to do as a business for our entire community is very difficult. We care about everyone's feedback and about how everyone feels, but we're not always able to address everything every time because obviously if you have over 6,000 artists on the platform, not everyone will be able to be promoted the same way all the time. And that is part and parcel of, being online.
Yes.
It's not easy. If you have 5 artists in an exhibition, then it's much easier for them to get equal exposure and to be able to meet customers and be able to generate sales. So when you're online, it's something that you have to take on the chin is that things will fluctuate and they do tend to generally fluctuate quite regularly. And that's okay. It doesn't mean that it's not going well. Sometimes you'll do really well. Sometimes you'll do a little bit worse, but overall the balance is the same. So that's definitely something that's difficult to find. I would say that what's important generally, whenever anyone has an issue and they want to express this and just try and find a solution to get more views, for example, to generate more sales, is to try and not see it as a single problem, but think about what is the thing that you're trying to achieve. Like, what is your dream goal there? Is it just to want equal promotion for everyone? Because it's very unlikely to happen. And unless we triple the team and we triple the size of the website so that we can promote everyone everywhere, then it's not going to happen. So what is your next best solution? What are you trying to achieve? And try and give ideas as well and feedback regularly, rather than wait for things to get really bad so that it's really frustrating and then you have to get it out in usually a way that is not the most constructive way to get it out. We'll still listen to it, but if you're shouting, you get less out of something than if you're calmly expressing what's happening.
Very
so
true.
I would say ask as many questions as you can when they come rather than when they pile up. If you feel that something is not right, that you would like to be more featured, then just say so. Ask other people around you as well, because often as an artist, we're very focused on what we're doing, and this is what we're doing. Well, things are happening to all those artists as well, and they have a breadth of experience, and they're very, very willing to share it. So I would say make the most of the community as it is. Go to the forum, ask other sellers what their experience is, send them a DM, make sure that you communicate with other artists to understand exactly what the whole picture is, because you may look at things from your point of view, but it is only one point of view. And sometimes we have to look at a bigger picture to understand why something is not happening, why a feature is working a certain way, why a feature needs to be prioritized over another, which may not always be, to everyone's benefit, but it will be to the overall benefit of the community as a whole. And that's the thing that we have to kind of work with.
You have to look at it almost as a rising tides lifts all boats type thing.
Exactly that.
Now it's hard because obviously as artists, we have to balance that. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot of artists out there who understand that, but then there's like what Jane said, if you got to pay your mortgage, obviously you need to make sales. So it's kind of it's that balance that we need to strike, because I think a lot of artists, they do have to focus so much on self and, this is my creation and this is all about me. So it's really nice. And that's something that I've tried to do with the podcast too, is foster a little bit more community, realize that there are other artists out there. Their success is your success in some way, or at least is an example of what you can achieve if you do it this way. And reach out to people. Unlike any other time in history, there's so many artists that are just accessible at your fingertips. You can just DM them, you can reach out. Most of them will answer you. I know I answer a lot of people. So that's great. That's great advice. Jane, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No.
You don't have to. You don't have to. No, I mean, I think David answered well.
And I guess although 6,000 artists is a lot of artists, we do pride ourselves on fostering those relationships and on being there and listening, and it's a two-way relationship, and your business is our business.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got to look after each other, and we do our best.
It's interesting, isn't it? When you think about how that's changed, if you think 50 years ago, artists were struggling to get noticed anywhere by anyone.
In general.
Just get your work out there, being recognized, and you could spend your whole lifetime. And we know a lot of very famous artists who have gone through exactly that. Van Gogh is the first one that comes to mind, but
of course,
because it's a very obvious example of this, that you could spend your life just creating work and no one has seen it.
I have a brother who actually has an art gallery as well, right?
I know. And even then, that wasn't enough.
Yeah.
And now we have all sorts of platforms for artists to be able to show their work physically or online. But what it means is that everyone is there available to be seen. And so, I feel there's always a price to pay. It's never going to be 100% perfect or exactly as people want it, because that's not what life is about. And we learn from our mistakes. So probably we need to do a few mistakes as well, because it's important in the learning process. But rely on that community, because now we have access to artists from all around the world as well. I mean, how amazing that you can speak to someone in Australia, someone in India, someone in Japan. What an amazing world that we live in, that we have access to that.
It's crazy. And I love it. I mean, it's given so many artists the ability to actually make a living. Now you have to take responsibility and you have to start putting in the work and the consistency, but it's available now.
Preach.
And preach. But also it's one of those things where I lost my train of thought. I started thinking about preaching, but what was I going to say? Oh, so you have to do the work. There has to be the consistency of work. But I also love that in the past, it was just there were these gatekeepers, right or wrong, and some of them, it didn't have anything to do with the quality of the work. It was just no, you can't come in, you can't be a part of the club. But now you can be. If you have the work ethic and you have the quality of work and you can work with other people, you can make a living as an artist now. And I've tried to provide a little bit of a blueprint of that, but really it's just about doing the work, getting in the lab, creating, being consistent with your marketing, being consistent with your uploads, and just trying to always get better. And also people have to understand that sometimes certain genres of art don't sell as well as others. And maybe that will shift too, right? I'm sure you've experienced that with Artfinder.
Yeah, for sure. And I think what you're talking about there is really interesting. And we've seen it through our gender equality report that we've done the past few years. Like women as a whole are still massively underrepresented in the high-end art world. And why is that when on Artfinder we've been consistent?
Oh,
I think I'm losing you a little bit, Jane.
Oh no.
Uh-oh.
It was a very important point.
Do you mind if I stop this and save it and send you another link? Is that possible?
No, go for it.
Okay, great. Because I just want to make sure we have this if there's some technical problems. Give me 1 sec here.
Yeah. No worries. Let me just send a link. I don't think. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Oh, here's Jane.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. I'm just going to send the link to Jane.
I think she's coming on right now.
I know she's got it. Yeah. She's getting that.
Perfect. So sorry about that.
You lost everything. Have you saved everything? All saved.
Wouldn't that be funny? Well, we lost everything, so we got to start.
We lost everything. We have to start again. Yeah, thank you.
I actually kind of like stopping halfway to just save stuff because you never know. Sometimes in LA we have blackouts and you lose everything. So it's good to at least have the first half of this.
That's wise. Yeah, I found it quite interesting that as soon as Jane started to talk about gender equality, she just cut off.
It's the man. It's the patriarchy,
we don't want to talk
man.
About that, everyone. The patriarchy.
Patriarchy, man. It's keeping the woman down.
Controlling the connections. Yes.
Yeah. Well, what I was going to say. Oh, and wait. Sorry. Are you okay? I thought you were muted for a second. Sorry, Jane. So we're just going to mute you when you talk about women. No, horrible. So I consider myself a feminist, always have. And I love that Artfinder is doing that. I think what you were saying was Artfinder is actually, even though the art world is still not underrepresenting women, what I've seen is women are actually selling better on the platform than men are, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So
in
terms of sellers, we are 53% women. So it's really even.
Oh, nice.
But then, we have seen that our women sell more, so more artwork for a greater total value. So it's just not what we see in the high-end art world, right? And I think that is because of those gatekeepers.
It is.
Yeah. I remember last year, was it last year? We looked at the top 10 most earning artists worldwide. And in the top 10, there was not a single woman. And I thought that was so shocking to me. Yeah, I was really shocked. Really shocked. And there was at least a couple of names that came to mind straight away, which I thought would be on the list. And they weren't. They were quite far down on the list. And
it might not be the case anymore, but certainly
maybe not.
Years ago, the world's richest living artists, the top 10 were all men.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
It's funny because my experience has been, it's interesting to see that because my experience coming into the art world and doing this for 20 years is I've seen women represented, like in the galleries that I take part in, Shockbox, I'm represented by Shockbox, and we have a very strong female community. And actually they seem to be kicking ass more than men are here too, which is great. I love to see it. So it's interesting to see that still is holding on. I don't know what this entity is. I know it's the patriarchy. You can just say that, but like, it feels like we're making progress and I don't know what else we need to do to get there.
Yeah. And I guess the art world is such a kind of old beast. And if we're talking about representation in galleries and museums, we're going back hundreds of years. And I get, like Terry just said, time, like things.
Yeah, it's hard to change mentalities, isn't it? Yeah.
It is. Well, and it's nice
and be vocal. Be vocal. Just champion the things that you feel you need to champion as well. In recent years, we've seen social media has a lot of cons, but one pro is that it's given a voice to a lot of people. I don't know. Just a personal opinion, really. Yeah. But what it's done, though, is given a voice to a lot of people that didn't have a voice before, and it's allowed people to be more vocal, and not only people that were affected by it, not only women, but also supporters and people that that want to help women be in the position that they should be in life, which is equal. It's crazy to me that it's still, same job, different salaries. It's just an atrocity to me. Like, I don't even know how that's even possible legally.
Right, exactly.
So you have to fight. You have to fight for this, and you have to be vocal, where it matters, and make sure that you get your voice heard.
I completely agree. And some of my favorite working artists right now are women. I love their work, and I think they're doing some of the most cutting edge art right now. So shout out to all the women out there. It's changing, hopefully, for the better, and it'll continue to go that direction. Jane, sorry, were you saying something else? I don't want to feel like we cut you off. Like, stop it. Women are doing better, right, Jane? No. Okay, let's move on.
No, I guess just that it is and was a revelation to me that when you remove those gatekeepers and you remove those barriers, that there are just as many women as men artists out there, and they have the same opportunities. And I think that a marketplace like Artfinder is a kind of leveler in a lot of ways, because like you said, it's about working hard, it's about creating the art, it's about marketing yourself. Like it's a lot, and it's a lot to do, but you have as fair a chance as anyone else, which is so different to that gallery model.
Yeah,
definitely. Completely agree. So as much as I hate to do it, I want to talk about COVID. I call it on the podcast the virus which will not be named. But I wanted to ask how it has challenged you and personally, and Artfinder as a company. I know that I experienced the same thing as what you were talking about, Jane. I had a dip in sales at the beginning, and I was like, oh my God, what's going to happen here? And then my sales kind of picked back up, and then I had moments where it even skyrocketed. So that was wonderful for artists, but I know there were also other challenges. So I'd love to hear you talk about them either personally or as a company. And you know what? And I should just start picking people. Because, Jane, go for it.
Okay. So Artfinder's story, I guess you've heard a little bit, and from that initial skyrocket moment in kind of late March, early April, like our whole of 2020 into 21 was just this like incredible roller coaster. It just kept growing, and I think our sales were something like 146% up.
Oh wow!
From 2019 to 2020, so huge.
That's huge.
And then kind of as we fed through 2021, things have evened out a little bit. In terms of like trying to predict the business's growth now, it's been like the craziest of years, because just nobody knows, right? And I think it's quite easy to say we've had a year of this incredible growth, we're going to do even more incredibly next year. But then all the galleries of the world were closed. Pretty much everywhere was closed for all of that time. People were stuck in their houses. Like, it was not a normal year. And, the world will never be the same again in so many ways, right? Not just related to our businesses or our lives. Just, I think it will be a chance for everyone and everything to reevaluate. And what that means for the future of Artfinder's sales, really nobody can possibly say, can they?
Right. And the ripple effects.
So we're just riding the wave.
Yes.
As you do. And I think, what we're coming out into is some kind of post-COVID, touch wood, normal. And we're a better business for it. We're a bigger business for it. It's as you say, it's been such a hard time for so many people, but for online retail, it has been good.
Yes. And it's possible to have your business doing well and have a lot of personal challenges and familial challenges while that's going on. So even if somebody's doing well, they can still be suffering. I know I've had people that have experienced that in my own life, but it's interesting for me because I've always been preaching, get online. It's the future of art sales. But I think what happened with COVID is there was like a flooding of the market too. All these people who were averse to doing that in the past are like, no, I gotta get online. So everybody's getting online, including galleries. I know the gallery that I work with, we started doing virtual openings. That's all we did. And it was better than our, the in-person openings. People were getting a chance, artists were getting a chance to talk and have a platform to talk to everybody out there, all the collectors, and everybody was just focused on them. So we're trying to kind of carry over that model a little bit and do some sort of hybrid. But I think part of the reason why sales are dipping a bit is because, don't you think that the market is a bit flooded online right now? David?
I mean, yeah, go ahead.
No, whoever wants. Jane, you had
No, Jane is good.
Okay, Jane, go for it. I could be wrong. I'm just spitballing.
I guess in my 6 years at Artfinder, we have had a non-stop mountain of artists applying to sell on the site.
Yes.
That has always been overwhelming.
Yeah.
Did we see an increase in applications during COVID? We did.
Okay.
But not to the same extent as we saw customer growth, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I guess, as I said, though, like we're used to that. We're used to a huge number of artists applying to sell with us every month. And actually, one change that we've made to the business in recent years is the percentage of those we accept, which has gone down massively. So we currently accept something like 20% of artists who apply to Artfinder. Like it's at an all-time low. And that is because as a marketplace, you have to balance those two sides, right? And
definitely. It's practical too. You can't just have 100,000 artists. Yeah.
We need to serve the artists that we have. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the bit of the market that we know about, it hasn't felt like that much of a massive difference. So it's interesting to hear you say that, Preston, because obviously, you have a kind of wider, knowledge than we do. We just know Artfinder.
Right. Well, I mean, I guess being on different art marketplaces and like with galleries and stuff, I mean, I know I've seen artists who've never been online having a lot of questions. I've gotten a lot more questions from people, friends, like, oh, should I get on this line? Should I do this? So I guess maybe in general, and if you got a little bit of an uptick, maybe it's being spread out a bit, but I think it's safe to say maybe it's not flooded, but it's the water levels are rising, So, and you, David, I know you, when we talked last on email, you were going to visit your mom. You hadn't seen her in 2.5 years. I've had a similar situation here with my family. Has that been hard for you?
I mean, as far as my mum is concerned, yes, it's been difficult. Now, I think the uncertainty of things is what I've struggled the most with, because, of course, in the last 20, 30 years, no one has sat down and said, if there was a global pandemic right now, what would be the impact on the art business, or what would be the impact on my job? Or what? Do you know what I mean? Like, no one was prepared for it. It's happened before in the past, but I think we just presumed that we above that kind of thing happening again. And then it happened, and everyone went into panic of like, is this it? Is this the end of the world? Like, it was genuinely, I think you could have genuinely thought that and not, be crazy. It was very scary at the beginning. We just didn't know where it was going to go.
Apocalyptic.
And what was going to be the impact of it.
Yeah.
And then it started to last a lot longer than people expected. And there was lockdowns, and it was out of lockdown and back into lockdown. And you think, what is going on? Like, what's going to happen? Like, what's the long term? They have a rough plan of, there may be a first, second, and a third wave. But really, what I felt like is that across the globe, people just didn't know. We didn't know. We didn't know how long it was going to last. We didn't know how it was going to impact us. As a result of this, one thing that humans do very well is adapting. And we did that. We did very that. Companies have rethought how working is done. Hundreds of companies that would never have considered working remotely before have then taken the plunge and realized that actually there is a lot of work that can be done remotely before it becomes a problem. Of course, if you're a hairdresser, you can't do that remotely. If you're, there's a lot of jobs where they're going to be very badly affected, and it's been very hard for them for sure. But I think the world has realized that actually you can do a lot of things online and you can do a lot of things remotely. And that's been a big reassurance. It shifted a lot of mentalities. It shifted the way we look at our life and the way we live our life. So I agree with Jane. I think it's going to be transformational for society generally. What comes out of it, I can't tell you, because I don't know. I think a more connected society, maybe a more free society that's able to do things according to what they want to do it, rather than being dictated and this is like set in stone, this is how we do things in another way. I think we're more adaptable now than we ever were. Hopefully we learn from this as well, and we can plan if there was ever a next one. I think that would be good.
I hope not.
I think, like, for artists generally, I think it's been different because as an artist, and you tell me if you feel the same, Preston, or not, but as an artist, I feel that you are already quite insular by nature.
Oh, yeah. Because
you're used to taking the time that you need to take for you to be able to create, which is a very solitary process. It's not something that people can input to generally. You're in the zone, and this is what you're doing. When we went into lockdown, to me, there was not much difference because I wasn't really leaving the house anyway. So I got told, well, you can work from home. You don't have to see anyone. The parks are emptier. Nature's coming over. So this is great. Of course, when you start, dealing with like the actual real impact of the pandemic and like the deaths and not seeing your nearest and dearest for a long time, and people that, sadly lost people that they weren't able to see for one last time, like all this is just heartbreaking, and that's the reality of it. And you just, realize what the impact of it is. But yeah, at first I was like, okay, I think I can do this. Like, I think I can do this. Long time, it does weigh on you a lot more. And I found out, now I'm probably handling COVID less well than I did to begin with, because now it's just a matter of like, I just want it to end. I just want us to go back to, being able to celebrate each other and celebrate with each other and just meet each other face to face. Yeah. Have a drink at the pub, like little things like coughing in public with that feeling that you're going to get shots, like literally things like that are really important.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the pandy that won't quit. It seems like everywhere, and there are communities that just kind of, they want to hold on to it. I know we've got people here. I'll go out for a morning walk sometimes, and I'll see somebody at 7 a.m. with nobody around them outside walking with a mask on. And it's like, what's gonna happen? So I think there's still a lot of fear, and even some, I don't know, I don't want to speak for any governments or anything, but like there are certain countries that are still have borders closed. Some countries are suffering more than others. Like in LA, it kind of feels like we're kind of getting back, but then every day I get, news bulletins, COVID cases are surging and stuff. And I'm like, well, what's real here? And then it's
the same here. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the whole madness with what is truth now, like truth is in question. So it's becoming very complicated, but we're not a political podcast, but we can definitely talk about that a little more. I did want to talk about another one that's just, it's got to be talked about. NFTs. I don't know if Artfinder has talked about NFTs at all. I'm still on the fence, but I'm dipping my toes in. I've got friends who are doing pretty well in NFTs. Is there going to be an Artfinder NFT experiment?
It's possibly a controversial answer, but no.
Ooh, I like it.
We don't like NFTs, Preston. We don't like them because 3 guesses. Their environmental impact. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. It just doesn't feel sensible to us to go there. And it also feels like this huge zeitgeist that just everyone thinks that it's the thing to do right now. And
talk about a flooded market, right?
We don't think it's cool, so no.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a very short answer to that question.
I
wish I had a longer one.
No, I love it because I think that there are some people. I had a friend on who is like an NFT master, and he recently, like a couple episodes ago, and he kind of gave a blueprint of success in the NFT market. And he even talked about climate change and, the carbon footprint of some of them. And there are some companies that are actually completely carbon neutral. So there is that aspect to it. But yeah, I agree. I mean, I think we're talking about a flooded market. That's definitely a flooded market. And I think I don't know if NFTs are going to go away, but I definitely don't think everybody has to jump on the bandwagon. And I think there's room for both moving forward, For
sure. I don't know, like a lot of people are saying, like, is NFTs the future of the art world? I don't know if it is. Like, right. I don't know enough about NFTs to like make an informed guess, but it feels very faddy to me. It feels a bit like a fad. Everyone's jumping on it, like really famous people and us selling, like a tiny music note for 14 millions, and everyone wants to get on the bandwagon. I don't think it's going to work like that for anyone, that isn't a celebrity. And I don't know if this is the future or not. I would find it very hard to think that a physical artwork will disappear fully the same way that Kindles have not replaced books.
I completely agree. Yeah. But they're still there. So
they're still there. Yeah.
I think it'll start to dissipate a bit, and I think it'll exist and they will coexist. Hopefully, I don't want to put anybody who's just like an NFT focused artist out of business or anything, because I think they can. I think they can make money, and they are making money. So, but it's nice to hear. It's nice to hear that you guys aren't dipping into as a company the NFT market.
No, not anytime soon, for sure.
Okay, cool. But you are doing an on-demand print rollout, I saw recently, right? You're doing you have a fulfillment partner that you're doing. Did you want to talk about that a little bit, Jane?
We are running a very small, well, no, we absolutely can. A very small test of on-demand prints through Amazon UK.
Okay.
And UK only to begin with.
Okay.
Because that's our biggest market and it's what we know best.
Yeah.
But that is something that we have been thinking about for actually years. years and years and years. And so it kind of feels, amazing that we're finally there and we are live, and we will see how the appetite for that is, with the long-term aim of being able to fulfill prints on Artfinder.
Yes. And now just speaking for the artist community, can any artist on Artfinder eventually, will they be able to join this, or is it going to be a select group?
Well, it's very early stages. So we have a trial with a few artists. Mm-hmm. The idea is that eventually, like everything on Artfinder, we would roll that out to all artists. But that somewhat depends how the test goes.
Of course. Yeah.
It might go terribly.
Yeah.
You never know.
Right. And maybe there's a little bit of a crossover with the NFT market here. Maybe there's a little barrier between the two. Who knows? I don't know.
Who knows?
Yeah. But I hope it does well. I think it's a great idea, and I would love to take part in it down the road too. David, did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, not much. I think it's important to look at different avenues that we could take to help artists make a living, test things as well, and make sure that we see if it's valuable or not. There is no point us putting all the work into making this live on Artfinder, which is a big job to put that in place. I think it makes sense to test this with a different customer base on a smaller scale to see if it is feasible or not, and what's the reception for that before we invest proper work into making this on the platform.
Yeah, I agree. So I wanted to talk a little bit about shipping, because that's one thing that differentiates Artfinder a bit from other online art marketplaces. Most of them do kind of set up shipping, and there's positives and negatives to each side. I've done both. Yeah. And I actually am grateful for Artfinder to learn, because I learned so much about shipping. My first sale was like this big piece to, I think it wasn't to London, but it was to England. And I was like, I have no idea what to do here. Like, I have no idea. And then my wife and I were literally walking down the street carrying this package because we couldn't fit it in our car. And we were getting turned away at all these different USPSs. And I was like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. So I learned so much. And now I get so many questions from artists like, how do you ship? Like, what do you do? Like, what do you use? So I'm very grateful for that. It helped me grow my business and learn a lot about my business. But I wanted to ask you, have there been challenges? What have been the challenges and the benefits of having the artist be responsible for their own shipping?
Challenges wise, I think the most challenging thing has been for artists, to be honest. I mean, we're not going to shy from that. Not every artist is a shipping expert. We certainly aren't shipping expert either. So, we understand that it's a lot of information to have to absorb. If you're already busy creating artworks, so you may not also have the time to be looking around everywhere. The information changes a lot. Quite often. There's been a lot of big changes recently as well in terms of VAT, in terms of Brexit. It's complicated things a lot. So we know it's a big beast for everyone to have to tackle. I think we're all in agreement that eventually we would love to take that away from artists and just deal with shipping generally.
That was my next question.
Again, it's something that needs time and resources, and that is, again, a big thing to implement. I think for now, what we can do, the best thing we can do, and that's what we've been trying to do as much as we can, is supply resources and make sure that there are avenues for artists to not only ask us, but also to ask other artists in the same countries, how are they shipping their artworks, and what's the best way to package it? What's the best way to deal with customs, and what should you put on your invoice? Create as much learning material as we can to facilitate that. I think the cons of having a company organizing shipping for you is that what they tend to do is they have a flat fee for the shipping cost. And if you manage your own shipping cost and if you know that you can get it quite cheap, then that's quite a good incentive for a customer to want to buy your artwork. If a customer is told that they're going to have to pay twice the price of an artwork to get it shipped to their house, it's very unlikely they're going to want to buy it.
That's true.
So I think the pros and the cons kind of balance itself out. But long term, I think we would definitely love to provide more help for this and maybe take this over fully.
Yeah, that's interesting. That was my next question. But to any artist out there who is afraid of this aspect, look at it as something that's very empowering, because it really does teach you a lot about your business. And once you kind of get over that fear and you do it, it's like, oh, I can do this. Okay, I know how to do this. So yeah, I think it has its pros and cons. But it was something that I definitely wanted to ask. We're kind of coming to the end. I want to be mindful of both your time. Thanks for taking the time. But I have some kind of rapid fire questions I ask at the end. But I wanted to ask you first, do you have any general advice for artists, or do you think we've kind of covered that? Jane, I'm going to you.
Yeah. General advice for artists is, it's a massive cliche, isn't it? But just to do your art.
Yeah.
Do your art, work hard, be consistent with what you do, be consistent with your presentation. Our curatorial team look at every single new piece of art added to Artfinder every single day. So nice. Please do not feel ignored. You are being watched in the nicest possible way.
You're being watched. That's going to be the tagline for this.
You will be recognized.
You're being watched. In a nice way. Okay, that's cool. I like it. And David, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, just work hard. I agree. Put the work in, because there's a saying, that's my favorite saying, which says nothing changes if nothing changes. Which basically means that you have to make that change happen, because otherwise it's never going to happen. So put the work in and don't give up, because it's very easy to give up. But opportunities are there. You just haven't found them yet. So it's just a matter of going and trying to get them.
Yeah, for sure. It's complicated being an artist, I know, but there's one thing that I've talked about quite a few times on the podcast, which is there's a lot of artists nowadays, because there's so many opportunities available in social media. There's a tendency to kind of, I'm an artist, I'm selling work before you even have a body of work. So I think that's really good advice, to just kind of focus on creating the work. I'm always talking about body work. I'm approaching 1,000 pieces that I've created at this point. It's important to have that, because it's something to fall back on. I sell pieces from 15 years ago all the time. And if I didn't have that inventory, I wouldn't be able to consistently sell. So I think that's really good advice. Do you think that brick and mortar and online art marketplaces are going to continue to coexist in the future? Or do you think it's kind of going to be a trend that everything eventually is online? Or do you, I know you can't predict that, but I just would love to hear your thoughts.
I think we're back to David talking about Kindles and books.
Exactly.
I think both can exist and will continue to exist and complement each other, hopefully.
Yeah. It's like my dad. My dad's was in the movie theater business, and everything that came out new, if there was the VHS, it's into the movie theater business, DVDs into the business, streaming into the business, but none of those things killed it. So I think you're right on. David, if you don't have anything to add, I'm just going to move on to the kind of rapid fire.
No, yeah.
Okay. So I always ask a few things. It's hard because I have both of you, but I think maybe I'm going to give one to one of you. I want to start with just biggest failures. And I put failures in quotes because people hate that, the way I phrase that. But what I mean is something that wasn't a success, and what did you learn from it? As a company or personally, was there a failure that you can think of? Something that kind of changed the trajectory of Artfinder? And I'll let either one of you, if you have, to jump in, or you can talk about something personal, something that happened in your own life, completely
personal. Yeah, I don't know about Artfinder, because I've only been there for 2 years and I've not seen many failures, to be honest. So,
right.
So maybe they're hiding them from me. I don't know, but I've not seen them.
We don't have failures.
Yeah. No, personally, I think going freelance at a time where I wasn't ready to put the work in, where I hadn't developed a style that was mine, where I didn't have enough of a body of work, and I kind of weirdly thought that it would just happen. And, I went out and talked to someone, and that's how I got my first contract, and then talked to someone else, and that's how I got my second contract. And it was all very relational based. What I didn't expect is that I needed to keep doing that all the time for me to be able to make it a proper sustainable business. And right. I didn't experiment enough. I didn't create enough. And I think I was just not mature enough, basically. I think you have to, have the maturity artistically, but mentally as well as a person. Like, definitely. I hadn't probably gone through enough. So I could have had more opportunities, and I didn't seek them, and I didn't do the work that I needed to do for that. And after that, I got really disheartened as a result, because, you have a dream that you want to pursue for a long time. And I think not pursuing it is a safety, because as long as you don't pursue it, you can't fail at it.
Exactly. So and you can always complain about it. Like, I should have been.
Exactly. I can spend every job saying, I know I'm doing this now, but this is not actually what I want to do. Actually, what I want to do as an artist. Well, once you do it, there's no turning back. And if it didn't work, it's, it is a big thing to have to take on the chin. So I think that was probably a failure on my part, is doing it because I felt this is what I wanted to do, rather than because it was the right time for me to do it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, it reminds me of the quote that Brene Brown always talks about, of the credit goes to the one in the arena with the blood and the mud and the sweat on their face, not the people in the audience who are like, oh, I could have done that, or, they're doing that wrong. So yeah. Jane, did you have an Artfinder example? If not, I'm going to move on to something else for you.
No, let's move on.
Okay.
See, no failures. Totally.
I love it.
Failures, no such thing.
No failures in Artfinder. I love it. That's great. Okay, so I always talk about artists and creative people, which I consider both of you creative people as kind of like superheroes and stuff. So I always ask what your superpower is. What do you do when you're not feeling it? This can be just work related. Like, do you have a routine or anything that just gets you motivated when you're not feeling it?
So I'm a gymnast.
Oh, really?
So, yeah.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm a qualified gymnastics coach, and that has been my kind of other job since I've been like a teenager. And when I was a teenager, oh my God, it paid much better than any of my friends.
I'm sure.
These days, like, I haven't actually worked doing that since having my son. And he's just turned 3. So I don't really know if I can walk around saying I'm a gymnast. But what I mean, exactly. Like, I think when I'm not feeling it, I have to go and do something that isn't sitting at my desk. So I would go out for a run, or I would do the splits in my living room, or, like just remind myself that as human beings, we have quite a varied range of needs, and staring at a computer all day is not normal.
It's not normal. Yeah, I agree. I think it's contributed to, I hurt my back this year, and I think it was partially stress of the pandemic and being sedentary, and my back just gave out, and I'm starting to kind of build that back up over about 10 months now. But yeah, I think just getting moving is so important. And if you can get out in nature, even better, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I'm going to move on to maybe one more, because I know you guys probably have to go. So I'm going to go with you, David. Advice to your younger self. It can be any age. Imparting some wisdom.
From the age of 5 to the age of 18. They're all worthy of listening to that. I would say experiment as much as you can.
Yes.
And don't listen to your insecurities. Don't listen to whatever inner saboteur voice you have inside that tells you that you're not good enough, that the work you do is not good enough, that there are better people out there, that you won't have as many opportunities as others. Whatever we tell ourselves to prevent ourselves from going forward and just be free. What I've learned now is that everything you do in your life, especially creatively, is a learning experience. And whether you're going to sell it or not, whether it's successful or not, whether you do it as a hobby because you like doing it, because you felt like doing it in the moment, whether you like it after it or you don't, it doesn't really matter. The main thing is that you take something from everything that you do. If you do something you don't like, then it helps you define what you do that you do like. So everything is valuable. And I think I used to be very black and white in terms of what I produced before. And I used to be very critical about my own work. And as soon as I would find something I didn't like, then it was basically garbage.
Right.
And I threw so many things away that actually had value. Now I could do a line on a piece of paper and then find some beauty in it. And I'll learn from that. And maybe I'll use that somewhere else. Maybe I won't. But at least I'm not telling myself off for it. I think we can be very, very self-critical as artists. So it's important to be kind to yourself.
I completely agree. That's great advice. And it reminds me, sometimes I used to do just pop surrealism. I just did figurative work for 14 years. That's all I did. But I find that sometimes when I go back to stuff that I have previously discarded, I will find something in there. Even if I don't love the piece, I will find something in there that was hitting. And I'll be like, oh, this is a great idea that I forgot about. And then I can use that to kind of catapult me forward in a different direction. So I think there's value to everything that we do. I think
Absolutely.
That's great. Yeah. And then I guess, Jane, you're the OG. So we're going to, and I mean that in the best of ways. We're going to end with you. And just, is there anything that you'd like to say to the audience? Anything you want to say about Artfinder, just to kind of close up here?
Oh, I guess just like we've already said to our artist community, we exist to support you. We exist to sell your art, and we are here for you. Particularly since David's appointment, you've got a leader now, You
got a leader.
Yes, just follow the leader.
No, it's wonderful. It's nice to know as an artist that you're kind of held. It's nice to have a community, and I thank Artfinder for that. So thank you both so much for coming on. You can find Artfinder, www.artfinder.com. What's social media? I'll let you tell us.
Artfinder_com is our Instagram.
Yes, that's the Instagram. And yeah, check them out. There's always great posts, great stories. You just highlighted Ronald Hunter and his partner. That was wonderful.
Yeah.
There's always some cool stuff going on. And yeah, check them out. Thanks for coming on. It's been really fun. And hopefully at some point down the road, we might have the CEO on. So
yeah, for sure. He's keen.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. Stick around for 1 minute and we'll just say our goodbyes right now. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Preston. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
This has been the Living Artist Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I just want you to know that I appreciate you being here, and I'm grateful to be in your ears. Your art and creative life on this planet is meaningful, so thank you for sharing it with me. If you like this podcast, whatever platform you're listening to it on, please subscribe and share it with your friends. You can also leave me a positive review to show your support. This helps me to reach more people with the algorithmic magic and keep the show going strong. If you want to see more of what I do and check out the art that I create, you can visit my website at www.pmsartwork.com or follow me on social media everywhere at PMS Artwork. That's it for now. See you back here next time.